Hi friends, today we are going to deal with an important topic. Why did India opt out of RCEP? RCEP, or Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, was not just an alternative to TPP or the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it was seen as one of the biggest trade partnership after the World Trade Organization, which is the WTO. Since 2012, nearly after 28 rounds of negotiations, India on November 4th, 2019 decided to opt out of RCEP. Neither the talisman of Gandhiji nor my own conscience permit me to join it, said our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. So why did India opt out of RCEP? We'll know about it in today's video. So, what is RCEP? It is a proposed free trade agreement in the Asia Pacific region. That is, RCEP is a collection of countries, a group of almost 16 countries. Now, India out of it, it means 15 countries which have a common trade norms. That is, the tariff on import and export will be common and it will be reduced than the other countries. So, for some of the goods, the import duty will be zero. So, who are the members of RCEP? The 10 member states of the ASEAN, that is Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and their 5 FTA partners, which are Australia, China, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. India is also one of the FTA partner, but it came out of the agreement in 2019. So, what is the value of RCEP? RCEP potentially includes more than 3 billion people, or almost 45% of the world's population, and the combined GDP of RCEP is about 21.3 trillion, which is it accounts for approximately 40% of the world trade. Now let's check what are the benefits for any country to join RCEP. The current era is an era of uncertainty, especially with respect to trade, with an ongoing trade war and the WTO becoming less and less relevant. So, being a part of such regional cooperation groups, the trade will be assured, and the importers and the exporters will have some guarantees with respect to trade. So, this is the main benefit of entering into RCEP. And also, the Indian industry will become competitive only if it is exposed to regional and global competition. So, once India is open to competition, the products and the services which it offers will be of quality and competitive. And the third most important benefit would be that an agreement like RCEP with liberalization, not only in manufacturing but also in services, which is very, very important. And this would be carried out in phases, and it has considerable potential for India's services sector, especially for Indian software and ICT. With so many benefits, why did India opt it out? Let's check. Our PM Modi ji said that the negotiations with respect to RCEP has failed to address India's outstanding issues and concerns. There are 4 main reasons why India opted out of RCEP. The first one is the major reason, which is the trade deficit and the warning of Niti Aayog on FTAs. India has treated agreements with almost 11 members out of 15 in RCEP. And the FTAs were almost a failure for India. And this is the warning given by Niti Aayog. And when we enter into RCEP, it would increase the trade deficit. Let me tell you how. Initially, when the negotiations started in 2012, India requested that it would reduce the tariffs for 65% of the goods for Asian nations and 62.5% of goods with respect to Japan and South Korea. And for other countries like China, Australia, and New Zealand, India would reduce the tariff reduction on 42.5% of the goods. So, this was the initial demand for India. And this was opposed by almost every member of RCEP. So, in 2017, India liberalized its norms. It told that it would reduce the tariffs on almost 86% of the goods for Asia, Japan, and South Korea. And with respect to countries like China, Australia, and New Zealand, it would reduce the tariffs for almost 74% of the goods. Even this was not accepted by the RCEP members. They demanded that India must reduce the tariffs for almost 92% goods for all the countries. And there should be no classification of this country and that country. For every RCEP member, the tariff reduction should be on 92% of the goods. And it also wanted that almost one-fourth of the imports should be tariff-free. And this was really shocking, and India was unable to accept this demand. And the second important factor was, even without an FTA, Indian market is flooded by the cheap Chinese goods. Now, if we open our market by means of RCEP, wherein it is like kind of free trade agreement, Chinese goods can be allowed with a reduced tariff, then imagine how the Indian market, especially with respect to MSMEs, agriculture, and other small-scale industries, would be affected by the flooding of cheap Chinese goods. This was another important reason why India had to opt out of RCEP. And also, India demanded an automatic mechanism to impose safeguard duties on imports when the level it it actually, if the level it went above the threshold, then the automatic mechanism should be triggered and the safeguard duties can be imposed. But even this was not accepted by the other RCEP members. And India also stressed on one more condition with respect to country of origin. It told that only if 25% of value addition happens for a good or product, then the product can be deemed to be from that country of origin. Even this norm was not accepted by the RCEP members. So India had no other option other than getting out of RCEP. As we already saw, RCEP is not a it is actually a hidden opportunity, but it will not benefit India because the RCEP members didn't agree to the demands of India. So what should India do now? It must make its MSME sector competitive, and this requires immense capital and vital use of technology. So also we have to learn from the failures of FTAs. The FTAs mainly failed because of poor negotiations and poor implementations. And not only the MSMEs, but India must also prepare its agriculture and manufacturing industries for a global competition, not only for a regional competition, but for a global competition. And there are some sectors which are affected by the free trade agreements and they need improvement because they have a huge potential like rubber, pepper, areca nut, and edible oil. India was actually self-sufficient in production with respect to these items. But after it signed FTA with the ASEAN in 2010, India started to import much of these products, rubber, pepper, areca nut, and edible oil from the Asian countries. But what happened was the domestic producers suffered. Most of the domestic production stopped with respect to these items, and now we are not self-sufficient, but we require imports. So this should not happen if India has to enter into free trade agreement. India's own sectors must be competitive enough. And India's dairy sector, almost 100 million dairy farmers are dependent on India's dairy sector. So if we enter into RCEP, you know how Australia and New Zealand are proficient and they are gigantic with respect to dairy sector. So if we enter into RCEP, India's dairy sector would have taken a heavy blow. And so we must improve our dairy sector not only with respect to the immediate products, but dairy processing should be taken as a key potential and should be focused on. And with respect to solar energy, India already gets much of its solar panels and other vital items from China. So India's domestic production must be stabilized with respect to solar energy if we had to enter into such regional agreements, or else Chinese items would take over the Indian market completely. So if we can say one reason why India had to come out of RCEP is India's uncompetitiveness of exports, and the fear that a flood of imports from the partner countries would wipe out many of the Indian players. So, if it has to be told in a single term, India's own structural economic problems was the main reason behind coming out of RCEP. So we have to make our economy structurally competitive and competent. And only then the agreements like RCEP can do. Until that, RCEP will do more harm than good. So let's improve our capability and capacity and competency, and then we'll enter into such agreements in a rocking manner. Thank you.